early 1800s were a time of great expectation in Islam. That people were expecting the return of the hidden Imam, and there were various other prophecies associated with the time. So there was a lot of searching going on. A lot of people were actively looking for who the promised one was, based on the different numerical and other timely prophecies in, I think, in the Hadiths as well as in the Quran. So they were looking, and there were different schools where people were actively studying through the proofs. How would they know when the time had come? How would they know who the person is, who is the promised one? One of these schools sent people out to look all across Persia for the promised one. And a man came to the city of Shiraz, was separated from his companions who were part of the search in the morning, and they said, you know, may God assist you during your day on your search. Came across a young man who invited him back to his home, and you know, helped him wash up, gave him food, asked, do you have any questions? And the person started asking questions and talking about the promised one and what the signs were, and the person said, these signs are all manifest in me, and then started to spontaneously reveal a tablet that was what the person had not vocalized, but was what he had wanted to ask if he met the promised one. And the tablet fulfilled his secret wish, his secret question to the promised one. So they stayed up until dawn, and the Bab, who was a young merchant, I think he was 25 years old, and he was a merchant. He sold goods in the market and had as part of the family business. He was the first, this other young man was the first person to whom he revealed that he had come with a new message from God, and that his role was to create a movement that would purify people spiritually so they would be ready for the one who came after, who would have the greater message. So that was the Bab, Sayyid Ali Muhammad, and he was a direct descendant of Muhammad. Then the Bab sent them out to teach and say, the promised day has arrived. It's time for us to completely reform this country, to take on a new spiritual mission. So purify our souls, purify our bodies, get as ready as we can for the even greater message which is to come. And 19 years later, the Bab, Baha'u'llah, who was a follower of the Bab and the preeminent leader, he was exiled, he was imprisoned for following the Bab. And then 19 years after the Bab's declaration, he, in Baghdad, declared that he was the messenger who had been promised. And Baha'u'llah's teachings build on that rejuvenating message of the Bab. They're about the oneness of humanity. They're about achieving the peace on earth that all the world's religions have written about. So Baha'u'llah was the son of a nobleman. He, in Tehran, he inherited great wealth, great power and position. He turned away from it in order to serve the poor and to follow the Bab because he believed in his teachings. And he independently, through visions and through dreams, received the message that he was the one who had the message. He was the promised one, which was a tremendous burden. It wasn't I think for both the Bab and Baha'u'llah and the whole Baha'i concept of leadership, it's not a gift. It's not, oh yes, I get to be the leader. Right. It's, oh, now I have this tremendous job. I know it's going to involve pain and sacrifice and exile, possibly torture, and even my own death. But this is the mission I've been given by God. Baha'is understand progressive revelation is every religion comes at a time there's a need in society. There's a need for rejuvenation and a fresh impulse of the same divine message which is found through all the religions. Mm-hmm. So when the Baha'i faith came, when the Bab came, it was that time when this new message was needed. Mm-hmm. The Bab and Baha'u'llah are a little bit distinct in that they're seen as twin messengers. So it's not two competing religions, it's sort of two chapters of the same religion. Okay. So the purpose of the Baha'i faith was to create the spiritual milieu in which Baha'u'llah could come, and there would be prepared people who would be ready to take on his message and carry it further. So the Baha'i faith falls into the Baha'i faith, if you will, and essentially, though there were some people who didn't become Baha'is, which was their prerogative, as it always is, a majority of the Baha'is did become Baha'is, and now the Baha'i faith is seen as sort of an integral part of the Baha'i faith. The history of the Baha'i faith, when we tell it, as you've seen, it starts with the Baha'i faith, because they are, again, referred to as twin messengers and deeply connected. They themselves corresponded during their lifetime. They knew each other. They wrote about each other and to each other. So it was very much this understanding that it's part of the same divine process.
Have any priests or ministers or missionaries or that kind of thing, but we do have, as with all organizations, you need some kind of organization, right?
Sure.
And so it's based in Haifa, Israel,
okay,
on Mount Carmel.
Mount Carmel, okay, yep. Mm-hmm.
Which is the holy mountain for most
yes,
the large religions of the world, the Jewish, Christian, and whatever.
Yep.
And so these books are a little bit about some of the writings that have come out of the House of Justice.
It looks like there's a number of books sort of geared towards children there, right?
Yeah, oh yeah.
And sort of curriculums for teaching, is that what that is?
But in our faith, you cannot inherit the religion. The child has to make a choice at age 15. He cannot just be a Baha'i because his parents are Baha'i, although the parents have taught him all the Baha'i principles.
I mean, the Baha'i writings talk about raising your children as Baha'is a little bit, but it's mainly working on the spiritual life of the child. Mm-hmm. Just an understanding that there's more than this material world, an understanding of prayer, of meditation, of service, of just understanding your place in the universe. So that would be, I mean, a lot of the expectation would be that would happen in the family, and every family would do that differently.
You can feast any time from sunset until sunset the next day on the end of that 19-day cycle.
Yeah, like for instance, tonight we're having feast.
Okay, yeah.
Because the sun doesn't set till, or the sun...
sets relatively early.
Early, yeah, still relatively early. So we'll have it tonight. Tomorrow is the beginning of a 19-day fast.
Right. Is the feast a symbolic thing? Like, would you have ritual that goes with it, or is it more? Is it an actual feast where you'd have turkey or something?
No, we have zero ritual.
Okay.
And the reason for that is Baha'u'llah wants to get away from ritual because it becomes part of religion, and that isn't what it's about.
Okay.
So no, our feast is basically a spiritual feast.
Yeah.
Where we gather to pray together.
Oh, I see. Oh, okay.
We say prayers.
Yeah.
And then, as in all churches, there's you have church boards. And so we do that.
Yep.
We find out how we are financially, what we've got planned, these kinds of things.
Yep.
And then after that, we have a little bit of a social. So we have coffee, tea, whatever.
So prayer, then business, and then
business, and then social.
Okay, and that constitutes a Baha'i feast.
And that's our Baha'i feast.
Okay.
The original leadership in the Baha'i faith was Baha'u'llah, and Baha'u'llah established what was called a covenant. I mean, I think in any religious context it's called a covenant, in that he clearly outlined in his will and testament the flow of authority, as well as in his other writings, how authority would flow, who has the authority to interpret, to make laws, to expand on what he's written, etc. So that flow of authority has remained intact throughout Baha'i history. So it maintains the unity of the Baha'i community, and it helps ensure that we are focused on one central point of understanding. So within that, Baha'u'llah outlined, and then the subsequent centers of the Baha'i faith, we no longer have a figurehead in the Baha'i faith, we have an institution that's our central point, the Universal House of Justice. Oh, Señor.